That's
Uh,
good. Okay, cool.
oh
There
yeah,
we go.
this is perfect. Oh, I love your cut, by the way.
My what?
Your cut.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's just like it's something that I kind of I was tired of barbers because they was just send offs, and I was like, I'm just gonna cut my own hair. Then I made this up.
Oh, that's what's. And how long you been doing that for?
I've been like really short hair since like 2011, but this has been like a year or something, 2 years maybe.
Wow. Oh, that's dope. You got a nice little scene in the back. You know, inquiring minds are kind of like just looking in, don't get.
I'm like, this my
Got that
room.
proper canopy.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like the energy. I don't know. I have like a lot of like spiritual energy, so like that helps me to kind of channel it, especially at night, because like I feel like my ancestors come visit me really into my sleep, so it's just like a level of like I feel like very vulnerable in my sleep when it comes to spiritual shit. So
Oh no, that's dope. That's dope. That just means like you got good energy and you arrange good energy and you also attract good energy. That means a lot.
I mean, I does what I can. I try, I try. I feel like, vibes are super important. Everything is energy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Nah, I definitely feel that. So as I said, my name's Jason. I'm the one of the co-founders, owners of the condoms. Are you hearing an echo?
I can hear you.
Are you hearing an echo?
No.
Oh, okay. And we wanted to just kind of get a moment to bring you on here where, our people from our side really big fans of your work. And not only like your imagery, but what you're able to bring out both in your events and also through your website and some of the events that you handle offline. So I just want to give people an opportunity, number one, to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your background for the people that may not be familiar, and then I guess we can go more into a discussion where we can learn more about you and your impact in the industry.
Cool. I'm Coriama. I use she, her, they pronouns. I wear many hats, but ultimately I consider myself a pleasure activist. So a lot of that looks like, creating media, being a creative director, a fetish esthetician. So like I'm a licensed esthetician. And just like a lot of different things that I do ultimately under that like pleasure activism umbrella. And so in my past, like I'm from Michigan, so I worked at Planned Parenthood for a while.
Okay.
And then after that, I was like, oh, small town is cute, but I'm like trying to find some.
Where in Michigan?
Kalamazoo area.
Okay, Kalamazoo.
Yeah, so it's in between here and Detroit. It's like the middle place.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that gave me a lot of experience with like sexually transmitted infections and kind of just like the whole kind of health aspect to it, and like working with nurse practitioners and like getting just a real feel of that. And then I moved to Chicago, just wanted some independence. My mother was born here, and I have family, lineage here. So it was just like, close. It was like close to home and home in a way. So I was like, why not? And so I came here, and that's when I kind of just been like digging deep into. And I went to college, of course, but I went to Roosevelt and I studied race rights, gender, and activism on an international kind of scope. So I've circumnavigated the globe, kind of studying, what I call the ABCs, which is art, beauty, culture, and sexuality. And through that, kind of developed my aesthetic practice, but also like my sex positive practice, and also just like kind of just being intuitive and inquisitive and just a lifelong learner. But sexuality has always been at the core of kind of like the way I express myself as a person, just like the vibe, the energy, the way I move in space. Like, I just feel like sexual energy is creative energy. And as an artist, it's just something that I resonate with. So.
Got it. So let me ask you a question now. I'll tell you, one of our co-founders, LK, is actually on a live right now from East Lansing, right? So like real big on Michigan's definitely played a role in allowing us to be where we're at. How did you find out about like sexual activism and kind of what led you there? Because like one of the comments earlier was one of the people on the live was like they didn't really know what that meant. They didn't really know what that was. Is that a kind of a newer industry, or is that something that's been around for a while?
I feel like it's been around, but I think that Adrienne Marie Brown, so I have the book. She wrote this book called Pleasure Activism, which you can see I've been using mine. It's a Bible. This bitch got hella energy on it in the bags. It's just been all over the place. You find it. But it's the politics of feeling good, right? So a lot of the work that I was already doing was about, connecting the dots for people and not only just pleasure, but like sexuality as a mode of healing, as an art practice, like as a healing art itself. And so for me, when I, you know, got privy to pleasure activism, I was like, oh, that's what I've been doing this whole time. Like, of course, I resonate with activism because it's just like I'm kind of like a Wakanda warrior energy sometimes. So I'm like, yeah, I resonate with that activist, woo. But the pleasure part was something a part of my work, and I never thought to put those two words together. But the book goes into like, you know, sexuality, it goes into like intentional drug use, it goes into like masturbation, it goes into so many things. It goes into which really started my journey was uses of erotic, the erotic as power, an essay by Audre Lorde in her book. I mean, yeah, in her book of essays, Sister Outsider. So in here you can read that. That changed my life in like 2011. It propelled me to be more passionate about like, of course, like the Black community, but more so like femmes, like the spectrum of femininity and the equilibrium that's kind of, you know, in transition and happening. And so that kind of propelled me. But yeah, it's always been happening. I think people have always been talking about sex, about pleasure, in academia or in just like, you know, fucking music videos, wherever. Like people talk about this shit. You know, I think there's a pleasure activist and a person like Megan Thee Stallion, or a pleasure activist and somebody, you know, like Janelle Monáe. Like those people are doing that through their art practice. And so I kind of resonate with all those kind of ways to kind of, I don't know, acquaint yourself with it. So
God. So I just want to take one quick moment because I want to pin a comment so that like anybody that kind of comes in live will be able to kind of follow you and then also know what we're doing.
I feel like we need a drink and some music. It's a little kickback.
Nah, trust. And it's Friday night.
You know, I'm like, I should have got me some little chase and a little cup. I always feel like music's in my head, but it's like, you know, I'm the only one that hears it, so I'm like bopping around. It's like nobody hears my music but me.
Hold on. One. All right, hold on. 1 second.
We hear it a little. That's cute. Yes.
All right, perfect. And if anybody has any questions, they can definitely kind of they can put them up.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll just be able to address kind of as we go. So what? Let me ask. So when it comes to pleasure activism, right? Like, what do you think is one of the bigger misconceptions about it? Like if anybody, like, I'm sure, like, you have a good energy. You're kind of unique in your own kind of style and taste and flair. Like, I guess what's one area where people may not kind of like really appreciate the essence of it? Like, do people just look at that and be like, oh, that's just another word for being like super sexy or like something like how would you go to describe it?
I feel like the biggest misconception is that like when people kind of like don't recognize their own pleasure activism. And so what that means is like they don't recognize their own like palette of sensuality or sexuality, or, you know, really being able to identify like how they live in their truth. Because I feel like everyone's a pleasure activist. Like we're speaking from our lived experience mostly. Of course, you know, some of us are invested and do more study or, you know, cultivate more of a higher learning around it. But at the end of the day, like the biggest misconception is that like someone else is the pleasure activism. When it's if each person really advocated and really tried to understand and dissect and like investigate their pleasure and like what that means, I think that the world will be in a different position. That's why it's political. Pleasure is political.
Do you think that comes with like a certain age? Like let's say, you know, like Corey when you're like 13 or 15, just entering puberty versus like where you may be now. Do you think as you grow older and you begin to understand your body a little bit more or how you kind of connect with the world, you can also kind of like can you be in touch with your own body's pleasure or your own experience without, I guess, understanding your body and kind of Like, how does that fit in?
I feel like we are inherently pleasure activists. It's very young in age. I was like laughing to myself because my I was like the kid that used to masturbate a lot, and my mom would be like, "Girl, you ain't gonna need nobody to please you. You always pleasing yourself." And it's like that's where it has to start. That's the heart of the matter. It's like pleasing oneself. And I feel like we condition children to like go outside of their own curiosity of the body, curiosity of like other people, curiosity, like playfulness, right? Like it's
Yeah.
an inherent thing that children do. Um, I think that that's something that started for me, and I think for a lot of people starts at an early age, but we are conditioned out of that behavior. And so then there's a relearning and unlearning process because we've been taught so many things that go against our own innate kind of desire or ability to feel love or to feel pleasure, that we have to unlearn that and then relearn what we already knew at our embodied wisdom that was already there at a young age.
Got it. So let me ask, like, I guess, what do you think is one of the bigger barriers in terms of stopping people from being able to enjoy their pleasure? Because, like, you think it's maybe the church? Is it kind of how people were brought up? Is it kind of like
All
the
of the
the,
above.
the societal,
All of that shit count. All of it. All of it. It's all there. I feel like, religion, especially, that's why I think decolonizing pleasure is super important. I think that, especially people.
Now, before you go too far, when you say
Mhm.
decolonizing pleasure, what do you mean?
I mean the process of understanding indigenous perceptions and fluidity and models and behaviors around sexuality that we had, that our cultures appreciated, pre-colonial times. And that means that, like, what does that look like now? That means that, like, seeing that how conditioning can affect the way you see yourself and other people's ability to exist, even like religion, specifically Christianity and Islam affected a lot of particularly African spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about homosexuality, homosexuality is something that existed for so long for African folks. And I think that, like, with colonialism, it brought a lot of homophobia and it brought a lot of like anti, trans rhetoric. Cause like in people of colors, indigenous, like religions, philosophies, cultures, spirituality, like queer folks, trans folks in particular, were the gatekeepers of the spirit and like the spiritual, like, knowledge and like the passing down of certain information, because people who are non-binary and people who are trans and queer are able to transcend this, like, kind of this bodyliness. So it's like more of a spiritual awakening and understanding between, apart from gender. It's just like how we exist on the spirit level, on the spirit realm, and connecting us to our spirit realm, to the ancestors. It's a lot of ancestry work, and connection to sexuality as well that we don't acknowledge.
And how do you then bring
Sorry, I'll read a comment.
like, how would you then bring that to the present? Like, what is that reconnection? What is that kind of like reestablishing kind of
Yeah.
like our history with our present? What would that look like?
So on our website at sexkiki.net, so
Make sure y'all get
www.sexkiki.net, we have our bulletin, which you can click on our bulletin, and we have an interview with Dr. Zalika Clark, who literally is an oceanality expert, meaning she connects the Orisha Oshun with sexuality, and she's also a licensed sexologist, right? So her work is all about, decolonizing sexuality, and she has this autosexual decolonization process that we have on our website. I'm looking at it now because I want to make sure I get, I'm saying this correctly, that I'm quoting her right. And she talks about first recognizing, yes, sex kiki. Yes, that's perfect. That's it. And she talks about recognition being a part of that first process, then deconstruction and reconstruction. So deconstruction is the ugly part. Like, I remember, like, as a person who's always been queer, like going through that process of like self-acceptance, it is ugly. So like deconstruction, even reconstruction ain't always cute. None of this is just like perfect, but like that deconstruction and reconstruction is like that ebb and flow, that ugly, the dance, the, like, all of the essence, all of these things come out, things that we've been lied about our truths as far as like people of color, things like, what is sexuality, what is gender, what is all of these things. That's a part of it, and reconstructing ourselves to like think from a pleasure-based point of view. What that means is that with love and opulence and like you know, care and consideration for, you know, just the ability to be. Like sometimes we get so bogged down by like, oh, this is how it should be. But a lot of times we don't even think about, oh, we're colonized, so that's why we think that way. And that's a hard truth that like people don't want to think about, because that's a whole nother like root chakra. I don't want to deal with that shit. That comes with a lot of family shit too, like traumas and just like, so that's that. Then we go to the sexual decolonization, and that's more about like, you know, when we have conversations when we're like kind of maybe exploring more on like a, not just the intellectual, but like when the intellectual kind of is more meeting our embodied wisdom. So we're not as afraid to like, you know, be in these truths. So it's more comfortable. We get in a more comfortable place. And then sexual proxies is what she talks about. And so this looks like more of like a, and maybe like masturbation or the way that you engage sexually with a partner. It could be, you know, same gender or not. Like it's now it's about like how you're connecting yourself to what you claim to know, you know, or like what you're relearning. And then the empowerment comes. And that part is when you are allowed to like really step into your rebirth. And then to me, that's like, all of that is about like spirituality. That's all a spiritual experience to me in my
and let me ask you, like, so in terms
somebody said I'm just trying to nut. That's okay. Like ain't nobody saying you can't nut in the process of this. Sometimes you need to nut to get through shit. Okay.
So like how, like I guess I got a couple of different questions, right? And hearing you speak, a lot of it, like, in order to really go outward with it, you first have to come in touch with that internal. Right, yeah, so it reminds me a lot of kind of like you'll hear about like the Buddhist monks, which may kind of go to the top of the hill and then meditate, you know, 20, 15, you know, 30 years, whatever, and then back as a more enlightened, a more kind of at peace, a more at balance person with the rest of the community, right?
Right.
What would be that, I guess, an analogy for the sexual experience? Like, how would you educate somebody that's trying to learn more about themselves, but also kind of deal with all of these demons and battles and everything else as they maneuver, just being able to be comfortable being a kid?
I would say keep a sex journal.
Yeah, a sex journal.
Yeah, which I talk about that on our Sex TV podcast. We talk about like sex journals. So keep a notice patterns or thoughts and kind of like share with other people you feel comfortable with sharing, who can offer you a different perspective. Because sometimes we like to be in community with people that don't challenge us. Mm-hmm. So like making sure that we're like, also do our desires, are they in alignment with our dignity? So I know in pleasure activism, you know, she talks a lot about like having intentional celibacy.
My bad to interrupt you. Somebody said, I love the
freaky sexy. That's me. That's me that somebody recreated a photo that I took that I never even saw, and they like painted that. So yeah, like somebody talked about deviant behaviors. Like deviance isn't bad. I think we've kind of had a negative connotation with it. I think anything with intention can be powerful and like process like BDSM, and that's also a part of that too, is like how do we see like darkness even?
And where do you draw that line?
You gotta stick to your own morals. That ain't for me to decide. That ain't for me to decide. Yo, I'm not trying to yuck your yum. I'm just trying to say how you need to be mindful with intention and thinking about how it impacts other people. Like, that's all I know. Like, for real. It's like,
because I'll tell you, right? Like, we sponsor, you know, like we do a lot of education, but we'll also sponsor swinger parties. We'll work with people in the adult industry. Like, we just have a space where like we try to make sure that not only are we present, but we're right. Mm-hmm. And as kind of like one of the owners, like I'm sure anybody can tell you, like I actually have to go out to some of these events, and I'll tell you, like I'm mad wide open. I don't mind, but it's really interesting to see. I always say, somebody's most private thought is their like porn history, right? Like, because
somebody's most private thought is their what?
You can really see what somebody's into by looking at their porn history.
Oh, porn history. Well, mine will be mine will be like lesbian sex, which is really trash. You gotta like really search for it. Mine is like Brazilian ass shit. Like mine is like femdom, women strapping men. Like mine is like, you know, just a whole like weird. I don't know.
Nah, because seriously, like that's generally one of the most individual like actions that a lot of people take, right? Mm-hmm. Given you may find some kind of like in couples, like for the most part, It's somebody that's alone, somebody that's looking to climax, and they have their own journey with how they take themselves there, right?
That's true, because I'm like, my most recent history is like deep throating. It's like, for me, it's a lot to do with like throat chakra healing stuff. So it's
So
like,
hold on, deep throating is like, you got to repeat that one more time.
so I was thinking
like,
about,
and don't get me wrong, I'm like, I'm all in, like, help, bring me forward, right? Like, I'm trying to be educated.
because I was thinking about like the fact that like to be like I talked about earlier is like, you know, our sexuality also is a healing art, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
a process of healing, and like also that we can heal each other's with sexual energy and sexual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like with the porn history thing and talking about people's desires and learning a lot about people, I've been like really into like deep throating videos. But for me, because I'm really channeling healing my throat chakra, and I feel like, you know, from my own experience, I'm gonna speak from my own truth, but like you could literally heal your throat chakra. Yeah, but also from like genital worship. It's like it's like it's a whole thing for me. But like I really think that a lot of sexual acts, if we connect and be like put intention, like spiritual intention with them, that they can really like awaken us.
I agree with you 1,000%. I am not arguing. I think we should educate a lot more people on that specific aspect. But even separate from that, I do think. Do you think that you can find kind of like a chakra or energy in most sexual experiences if it's channeled the right way and it's something that you're genuinely interested in?
Yeah, I feel like everything is energy. Energy
Because
is life force. So
I'll tell you, like, even for me, right? Like, I'll give you an experience that kind of blew my mind, right? We were sponsoring an adult kind of like swinger event or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went there, you know, as a condom sponsor and everything like that. And when we went, I had like, you know, a liquor sponsor, right? And you know, kind of like how they'll have kind of like a little bench right in front of the bar, right? They had a guy that was wrapped up in like a rug, almost a serving like a human bench.
Oh, cool.
Right? And he expected people to step on him when you're going to order your drink.
Yeah, he probably needs that shit.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I'm just being real talk. Like,
yeah, it's like people's kinks are
like, but to me, what you start realizing that like your normal isn't everybody else's normal. Right? Like it.
We got some questions.
Okay.
Somebody asked,
what is throat chakra?
Yeah, I just spit on myself. I was like, sorry.
We had a couple of people ask that question, so I got.
Yes. So I'm gonna show this chart that I'm gonna read off of, but this is what I use on a regular basis. So I use this to check in on a regular basis with myself, usually once a day. But the throat chakra is the throat, so I call it the third ear because usually we communicate and voice the things that we hear or that we are with our comprehension. So like this is also about comprehension. But it's based in creativity, right? So it's like seeing like your whole self. And so like the way that we communicate and exist, you know, communication can be a lot of things, can be nonverbal. So I'm talking about all forms of communication here, but it's really about our creative truth. And at the heart of that is like connected to our throat, neck, ears, sinus, respiratory system. It's also about like feelings and openness and ideas and like life force and like also like ways that we communicate that's creative. Like if you think about like maybe nonverbals, if you're really close with somebody and how you communicate with them versus like maybe a business setting or, you know, a random person you just met on the street or a baby, like these are like, there's different levels to communication. And I also feel like there was another thought in my head that just went away, but maybe it'll come back. But also I feel like when it comes to communication, it's like, how do we tap in with our own life force? Because a lot of people aren't aware of the energy that they carry in space. So like a lot of times you're like, oh yeah, make sure you know, check yourself, be accountable for the energy you bring into space. But like, how do you do that? It's like, you have to do that by cultivating like the way you understand your own creativity. Because
so how do you like let me ask kind of like a flip side of that, right? How do you mix creativity with pleasure activity, right? Like, can somebody not be creative, right? Like in a traditional space.
I don't believe that like people aren't creative.
Right?
I don't believe that people aren't. I think everyone's creative in their own way. We just try. When people think that they're not creative, it's usually because they feel like they're like comparing themselves to certain type of creative people, and it's like creativity comes up in so many types of ways. So I would tell, not like that's not what you're saying, but I would challenge folks that think that they're not creative to kind of dissect that a little bit and kind of like explore that a little bit, because the way that we even step into this realm is based on creativity. The way that we exist and are able to survive is based on creativity. So that's just my truth, but yeah.
No, okay. So hold on. Let's go. We have another. All right. What are your thoughts on celibacy? That's
I
another question.
think celibacy is a beautiful tactic to A, get in alignment with yourself, and B, to make sure that your desires are in alignment with your dignity. And what I mean by that is sometimes that folks do things based on templates, especially relational templates, and especially templates when it comes to sex. And I think that like when you are celibate, you give yourself a pause. That doesn't mean you need to be celibate for a year. That means you could be celibate with just like, maybe I'm not sucking dick for like 2 months. I don't know. Maybe it's like I'm not gonna be kissing people because I feel like that gets me into weird situations, or like maybe I'm just too friendly right now with myself and I need to like preserve my energy. It could be anything. And so I think this allows us time to kind of process and think about our behaviors and like kind of what we want to do or what we don't want to do, who we want to share time with, who we don't, all the things. I think privacy is like it's like a restart.
So what about people that wait, and this is, I guess, kind of like a piggyback on what you were saying, celibacy, but also back into the original part about pleasure activism. What about people that wait to have sex or to lose their virginity, right? Are there other ways that people can still kind of like engage and learn and become a pleasure activist if you're not actually engaging in the act of sex?
Yeah, I feel like it depends on how you identify sex, because a lot of times that is coming from a viewpoint of like sex as penetration. And so a lot of people are thinking about the vagina and the hymen, and then like this purity culture that assigns a woman's worth based on her body count or based on her lack of, or like exclusivity, right? Like the monogamous thing of like, oh, only one person. And then, then I'm more of I deserve more love. Like we measure this based on our capacity to receive and give love based on the male gaze. And so I feel like when it comes to that, I think, I'm not here to talk about anyone's religion, because it's like, whatever, do what you do. I had to go through a process as a person raised in the church, the Baptist church at that, a process to get over that, like conditioning, that rhetoric in my own spirit that was like, oh, you can't do A, B, or C because this means A, B, and C. So I've been through that process. And it is not always pretty, but I felt free as hell, because it was like I had to do this. I remember the first time I like had sex with two people in like a couple of months, and I was like, damn, does this make me? I had to analyze what a hoe meant to myself. But it also can be a good space for like really identifying what you want to do versus culture and family. It's so many things. It's like really identifying yourself as an individual. And so I feel like at the end of the day, when it comes to that purity culture thing, it has a lot to do with some things that I think are problematic, and not from a sense that you like are spiritual or like you have a relationship with God or whatever that is. It's more about like it's controlling you. There's a power and control around sexuality, and it's like manipulating you to like exist in a way that structures and power, usually white men, want you to exist in order to keep the status quo going. And that's my only challenge, is like, are you doing this because you for whatever like individual reasons, or are you doing this because you feel like it's going to get you some type of acceptance that maybe not be true?
And I'll tell you from like a male perspective, like when I was younger, one of the girls who I dated grew up in a very, very like uber religious household, right? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't like her first, but I was one of the first few people that she had been with, right? Mm-hmm. But the level of guilt that she had, like when we were sexual, was like extraordinary. It was so much like she could never be comfortable, or she felt guilty for enjoying the act because it went against everything that she was raised to do because of the church.
Right.
Like had literally been conditioned from the time that she was a girl to feel guilty about her being able to enjoy the experience. And as a man, I think a lot of times, like, it's hard to kind of be able to kind of, like, you want to be, I guess that's a better question for you. What would you recommend for like like somebody in that situation where your partner is going through that experience, where they're not necessarily comfortable being sexual and all of that because of the religion.
Someone said that feedback. What does that mean? What's that mean?
Hold on. There's a look that may be coming from you, Corey.
It means like when I talk, they hear like echo.
Maybe, but it seems like I don't hear it.
Okay.
Somebody was writing that guilt is something else. It took me a long time to feel that.
Yeah, it does take a long time. I
So
feel
what
like
would you recommend for somebody in a relationship with a partner that's going through that?
I would say I would recommend they go to my friend JT Perry, who is that's what her work is about, because she literally is a church mystic, but she's also does the similar work as me. And like all of her work is talking about like the connection between church and pleasure, and like how that affects particularly our Black community. And like she has like a lot of information around, you know, just the work and like what resources are out there for folks. So DM me. I would love to give any information to folks who, you know, are going through that. But I think it's like getting support, like different types of therapy, right? And so, and I'm not always talking about like, you know, the one-on-one talk therapy, but like finding therapeutic like spaces that can hold space and solace for you, so that you can like, you know, move through your truth in a safe space, in a brave space, particularly because not sometimes church, if you're especially trying to explore something that in a particular setting or culture where everybody believes the same thing, it's hard to kind of like process if you're trying to understand or trying to free yourself of that stigma behind something, when those people probably didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because they're still stuck in the same kind of like, you know, cyclical process. So as a person who went through that on my own, I did it on my own, you know. It was from like 19 to 21 that I feel like I had that deep, you know, that process. And for me, honestly, masturbation was the key to that.
Serious.
Yeah, it really was, because I started like buying toys and like really exploring stuff and like trying to just like be in my body in a way that like felt comfortable for me.
Got it. So we have another question. You see this? Do you think monogamy can ever not be about
control? Yeah, I believe that. So someone else asked me about monogamy. So I believe that monogamy exists, but not in a way that we think. I think monogamy is the beauty of that beautiful connection we have with each individual person that we know, right? So it's like the energy that we share with people, right? And it's on a pure and natural and its own wave and its own, you know, experience. And I think that is beautiful and true. And doesn't mean that's monogamy. That doesn't mean that, like, you know, that your partner, lover, friend is not going to have this super awesome connection, regardless if it's sexual or platonic. It doesn't mean that they're not going to experience other great energies or experiences with other people. So sometimes I think we connect it more to a sexual experience, to the point where we don't think about so many ways to connect. And I think that's a pleasure activist thing too, is like there's so many ways to connect, there's so many ways to have sex, there's so many ways to, you know, to feel. So I feel like when it comes to monogamy, I think it can exist without control, but people have to be very intentional with like what monogamy looks like. Sometimes for people, monogamy is like we fuck other people together but not apart. Sometimes monogamy is like when we ain't in the same town, we do whatever. Like, you know, but we still together. And or sometimes monogamy is like we have physical connections and not emotional. Or sometimes monogamy is like don't even eat the Cheetos with another bitch because we the Cheeto friends. And if you eat Cheetos with them, I'm gonna be mad. Like my former partner, who mostly dates men, he didn't care what I did sexually with people. He was like, you better not go thrifting with other people, because that's what we do. Like we the thrifting. Like that was his thing. He's like, that's because he like, you know, would try on like feminine clothes and like do this whole thing that that he felt comfortable doing around me. But he's like, that's just like my limit. And I was like, all right, well, all right.
hold on, one sec. We got another one. What's the difference?
The difference between being a sex therapist and a pleasure activist is essentially like a sex therapist is state mandated, which that means that like there's certain stipulations that they have to abide by based on like literally a political, like, what do you call it? what is that called? Like they're certified through like the state. So if they go against certain rules, they can lose their license. And a pleasure activist has more mobility as far as like what they can do. They can't substitute for a sex therapist. Like those are two totally different things. But the pleasure activists do like bridge the gap between a lot of like comprehension.
Got it. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure that we take a moment to get this.
No problem.
This is a good one.
Did you like, yes, I support this question. Do you believe that poor sexual chemistry between two people can ever improve? Yes, if they wanted to. But sometimes it's like also like.
Do you think people shut it down after a certain point? Like,
I think people
been in a relationship where you enjoyed their companionship to like another level, but sexually you were just kind of like no, it's energy.
Usually that's my connection with men. I usually date 2 men at once. One I like emotionally, and another one I like physically. That's just my relationship with men. But I think that like when it comes to chemistry, I feel like it depends on what type of chemistry. A lot of times we try to like we romanticize what a relationship really takes, and so we romanticize what sexual chemistry can be. Sometimes sexual chemistry has moments in time where it don't be no chemistry there because you be stressed out, you be like in limbo, there be shit happening, real life stuff getting in the way, your job getting on your nerves, whatever. It can be whatever. So sometimes it's just like literally be like personal life shit that get in the way, and people think that and people take that personal like as a personal attack, and then it creates other kind of like, you know, snowball effects in a connection when it could be just like I need like a month to get together, like, because that's happened to me recently with one of the guys that I've been seeing. It's like some shit happened to me. I had to process it, heal through that, and it did cause some conflict. But like we better now. So it's just like it depends on how your level of investment of your own healing and a person's investment of their own healing, and like how y'all are honest about that, and how you can like really like kind of meet each other in the middle. And the middle doesn't always look 50-50. The middle is like, what can I really bring to the table right now? And what can you really do? And if they don't bring what you need, sometimes you gotta look elsewhere. And I say to cut them off elsewhere, but like your needs cannot get met by just solely one person. And that's the issue with monogamy. It doesn't leave room for like exploring other people that can also potentially make your relationship work. People be hating on mistresses and side bitches, but sometimes they be helping you out the most.
Yeah.
You know
And what are your thoughts for people that are already married but in that situation? Like, I'll give you a perfect example. One of my boys got married, had a kid, right? His wife dealt with pretty bad postpartum, right? And he was supportive, you know, try to be with her all of the way through while she went through. But they're now kind of like a year and a half past, and the kid's now a year and a half old, and had sex at like 6 months. And it's just kind of like become a secondary.
Well, it can be secondary if you got a whole family to raise for her and like your body transition, you have this whole mental thing. I think sometimes like also this whole idea about gender too, about like men having this role and women having this role. It's like if you are in a relationship with a femme identified person, a woman, a person who is bearing a child, it's like some things are really life changing for people. Like in that capacity, like it's literally life changing. And so if you don't have a partner who is,
but what about what you sign up for?
Yeah, it's like, and if you don't have a partner that is able to mediate that, or y'all have real conversations. Some people are not in relationships where they can have real conversations. Like maybe he's not in a relationship where he could be like, hey, I want to have sex. Can I, you know, I know you're not in the mode. Can I have sex with somebody else? Like if you're in a strictly monogamous relationship and you need something outside of the means of like, you renegotiate. Like people need to renegotiate in their relationships. Negotiation is quality of life. And sometimes you don't have a relationship that you can really actually negotiate. So shit just be stuck. And people be bitter and mad. But it would be great if that side bitch was here because she'd be helping you. You know, it would be whatever. But I just feel like negotiating.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Negotiation is the key to life. All
right, next question. What do you think about sugar babies?
Can I find a sugar daddy? I want to be a sugar baby. No. I feel like I don't know. I feel like what is there to think of them? Like, do you like as long as it's safe and healthy and like you getting what you need or needs met, like, and also sugar baby doesn't always imply sex. Like some people need emotional companionship. Some people need you to be cute and go to dinner with them. Some people need a whole ass escort. Some people need you to like, you know, twerk in a mirror for them. I don't know. But you never know what a person needs. People assume that just because you're a sugar baby, that means that you are literally fucking somebody, and that don't mean that.
Got it. Hold on, we got another good one.
That is so true. Side girls sometimes do get dudes better in better moods than their women. That is so true. That's the fucked up part. It's like they don't think
that level of attachment.
That's true, but also they don't think about it. It's like, damn, I can still carry the same energy. It's like in relationships when we think that like we give all of like people we don't know our good attention and like our happy face, and we don't to the people that we deal with on a regular basis be lonely. It's like the people that we feel closest to and connected to, we should treat them the best, not the other way around, which is a lot of what happens. It's like we be so nice to people we don't know, and then we just be so sour to people we do know or claim that we care about, which is it also has to do with like trauma and like shit we experience with our youth and whatever we haven't dealt with in our own kind of like root level stuff. But that's what I've seen with that.
My sound is acting up a little bit. All right, I'm back now.
Okay.
All right. Sorry. Little.
Okay.
All right. Did you answer the next question? What are the keys to building?
Oh, I didn't see it. I think movement. Like literally, like dance, not necessarily the sense of like you got to be the best dancer, but like literally moving with somebody, feeling somebody's energy, getting the vibration together. Like I think movement is the key to that. I really do. I think that like dance movement therapy is super important to like work through traumas that we have in our body that also hinder us from having a physical connection, regardless if it's just like physical intimacy, like physical touch, even hugs, like platonic touch, or like actual sexual touch. So I feel like doing that movement therapy with people, regardless if it's just in your house playing a song or like whatever, I think that that is a healing component to build sexual chemistry. I think that like Tantra is a way to build a sexual chemistry. I think that like looking in someone's eyes, holding someone, like just having certain things that you do to kind of warm you up to a person's energy, to really figure out if that's the energy that you want. Now, if you gotta try too hard, like to the point where it's like sometimes people force a chemistry that's not there, and so we gotta identify like what's worth fighting for and what's just not actually there.
Got it.
And that's only for you to make the decision and discern, because it's your reality. Like can't nobody tell you that for you. People can help you, facilitate you through understanding, but ultimately that's your truth. So
got it. So we got another one. How do we decouple love and sex and emotional connection? Are they the same?
How do we decouple love and sex? And they can be the same, but they're not always. Like they can definitely be a whole plate of, love, intimacy, sex, coupling, whatever. But they're not always. And I think that like emotional connections, it depends on how like people decide who they're emotionally connected to based on their level of like investment. If they feel like it's like something that's an investment for them, then they'll be emotionally connected. But like that is up to that person. So sometimes we want people to be emotionally invested in us, and they don't feel like that's an investment of their time, energy, whatever. And that's their truth. And so I think that they can be different and they can be the same. I think it depends on like the person and like their honesty with themselves and like their connection to that whole idea. Because some people you can have sex with it, you can't be in a romantic relationship with it. It's honestly, some people don't have that type of emotional maturity.
Do you think that can genuinely be the case? Do you think that do you think the opposite is true as well? That you can be in an emotional relationship with somebody that you just can't be physical with, and you have both sides? Yeah,
I think both are possible. I think everything is possible with relationships. For real, people are.
It's all what people agree to.
Negotiation is the key to life. Know what you need so you can articulate that, and have a solid masturbation practice, regardless if that's like dancing in the.
Do you think that takes away from relationships at times? Though?
Not if you think of it as a tool to connect to someone versus something like to like escape. It's not about escapism. It's about like just really. It's like a whole process. It's like even with community, like the community. Like I don't think a relationship can really thrive if they don't have a healthy community around them to support them. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want people in my business. I'm not talking about trash folks that really aren't in your best interest.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a healthy community of people that want you to grow and survive, because we need people to be able to like support us in what we do in life. And so I think the same thing about, you know, emotional intimacy or like sex, love, all of that. Like a person can be a part of your community and offer you like love and intimacy. That doesn't mean that person's going to offer you like sex. A person could be in your community and offer you sex. That doesn't mean, or they could offer you all of that, but it depends. It's so like nuanced.
Okay, and I at 1 hour, Instagram generally cuts it off or whatever. So I just want to be able to take kind of like one or two last questions that way, and then, you know, give you an opportunity to kind of close it out and let people make sure that everybody knows where they can find you.
Cool.
And that way, you know, and I just want to again say, you know, thank you so much for
Thank you.
So hold on 1 sec. We got another question. It's a longer one.
I regularly practice sex magic. Should I ask for consent from my partners when practicing if my intentions are straight? I feel like magic one-on-one is like, if you're literally utilizing the energies of other people, you should get the consent of those people. Sometimes sex magic, and like if you're doing your sex magic by yourself and you're trying to, you know, have some revelations or process some things when it comes to other people, that's different. But like if people are in the space, and it's better to ask them, but I've also used sex magic when people were lying to me. So, you know, I think the ethical thing is like, if you're in a situation, you know, you want to get people's consent. But now if there's deception, then sometimes you got to use magic to like, they have to have things revealed.
Hold on, somebody's asking what is sex magic. Somebody needs to.
Oh, so sex magic is using sexual energy or sexual experiences to conjure or manifest. And so that can look like actual spells, ritual work. That can look like, you know, intention. That can look like sorcery with like candles and all types of shit.
Is that like what people's grandmama used to say with "don't eat her spaghetti"?
That's some menstruation shit. And then that could be that, but like also like, you know, people gotta do what they gotta do. So make your informed decision about your spaghetti. Not all menstruation blood gonna be in spaghetti. Some people can put other juju, but you know, I'm just saying that honestly, sex magic is just like any type of other energy or manifestation or conjuring tool. Is a way to like change energy, to like bring things into your reality. It's a way to transform, transcend. It's just another way to connect to this realm and other realms and ancestors as well. So can we see the green toddies? What's that?
I don't know. Is Toph Maz in here?
I'm like, I don't know what that is.
All right, hold on. We got other ones. Oh yeah, this is a good one. This would be a good transition as well.
Okay. Corey, are you doing virtual events during the quarantine? How do we sign up? Hey, thanks for asking. That is a good segue into what I do outside of, you know, pleasure activism. It's connected to pleasure activism, of course, but yes, I'm actually in a transition of like, what does sex kiki look like online? So I have been hosting Masturbation Monday meetups via Zoom. You can sign up on the website, or you can DM.
What does that look like?
And I can send you more information. But Masturbation Mondays I host a chat about masturbation. So we come together as a community. There's activation. We have a discussion. You know, I kind of connected to different literatures. Like one book that I'm reading right now is The Spirit of Intimacy. It's the ancient African teachings and the ways of relationships. And so I connect that to some things we do. Also, healing sex are some kind of prompts and things that we use. And then I'm gonna be changing it where if people want to do more of like a kinky kind of masturbation thing, then there's a room for that. If people want to do more of like a workshop thing, there's a room for that. So I'm yes, but I'm also getting acquainted into what's that gonna look like. But you could always DM me and I'll send you like links, but also the Sex Kiki website via events. I always, you know, update that. So
okay, so hold on. This will be the last question.
I do have OnlyFans. Yeah, I do.
Hold on. Here we go.
how can you work on more of an unselfish attitude about having your partners have you as their number one? So I feel like I'm always number one. That's just kind of how I always think. I'm like, I'm always number one. And sometimes also knowing that, like, I think people also need to have other connections too outside of their relationships to remember that they too can have meaningful connections with other people. And that can also feel like a number one. I feel like people are number ones in their own right. And so I think the hierarchy, like, I think that's like a scarcity culture that comes with like first place, second place, all of that. Like, you can have like your like domestic life partner or your platonic life. Like, there's so many types of like ones or relationships or like people that, you know, anchor us in our existence. But at the end of the day, that's just something that you have to work through with, like, where's the trauma that says that you're not number one, regardless if they connect with other people or not. Because usually it's like underlined with, like, you know, abandonment, jealousy, or, you know, whatever. There's whatever we've dealt with that we haven't dealt with. You get what I'm saying? So yeah.
Well, the time before IG cuts us off, just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. We're definitely going to keep in touch, you know, after the separate call, all of that other stuff. But I want to make sure that you let the people know where they can find you, how they can follow you, if they want to take part in your virtual lesson, and all of that before we shut it down. And I just want to tell everybody, you know, thank you for joining Platinum Talk and giving us the opportunity for us, you know, be able to learn more about you, more about pleasure activism and your impact in the world.
Yes, so via sexkiki.net, so www.sexkiki.net, you can find bulletins, like different things that we offer. We have a podcast. We also have a column, an advice column with Spectrum Boutique, which we have all of that on our Instagram. If you click our link tree, you can see all of that. And so it's underscore at sexkiki on Instagram. So underscore or at underscore sexkiki. But for me, everything is Coco Meow, Koco Meow. That's like, you know, my sex kitten kind of personality, energy. And I have, you know, OnlyFans, Twitter, all that stuff. But yeah, everything that I do as far as education wise is through Sex Kiki. So yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you again. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation, and thank you so much. Really engaging. I'll tell you, I done learned a lot today.
I learned a lot too.
Yeah. Nah, this was really, really enjoyable. Well, thanks a lot. Definitely enjoy your weekend.
You as well. Thank you so much for your time. Thank y'all for listening to me. Bye. Oh, can you save this so we can have it?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna save it.
Cool. See y'all.
All right, no problem. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.